Welcome to Valley Newsline for the week of October 1st, 2006. Hello, I'm Ron Whitlock. On the program today, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, the senior senator for the state of Texas, Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff, Dr. David Topazian, whose Armenian family immigrated to the United States after terrorists forced them to flee their country by poisoning their water supply, killing family, killing friends, and killing neighbors, and eliminating, of course, the further use of water in the country of Armenia. 2.5 million people killed. They left their country. And in the studio, Dan Medina, former city manager, former public works director for the city of Pharr. Don, thank you for coming and being with us on the program. Program today dealing with water. We're talking about water today because the Rio Grande Valley has its primary source of water. That's the Rio Grande River. Right, Don?
That is correct.
And the Department of Homeland Security and the President of the United States directed all water municipalities some years ago to do an assessment and determine how vulnerable they may be to terrorist attack or a man-made failure of those water systems that could hurt the economy and the people of those municipalities. So we're going to talk about that. We talked with Secretary Chertoff about it and the Senator about it, and we're going to let Don kind of fill in the blanks because he's been on the ground running during his professional career, running cities and being in charge of water systems here in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas. Native to the valley, Don?
I was born in McAllen, but raised in East Central Indiana. Family were migrants. We toured up into the Midwest, and I grew up in East Central in a little town called Union City, Indiana. But I've been here for 20 years, and I lived in Indiana.
Consider yourself a Valleyite now.
I'm a Valleyite, yes, sir.
We've gone, folks, from spinach and E. coli. We now know we can't eat fresh spinach. At least we learned that over a period of time. We hope that problem gets solved so we can go back to eating the spinach that we desperately need. Palm Valley, city of Palm Valley, had an E. coli involvement with their water supply a couple years ago. E. coli, which is basically fecal matter, got into the water supply in the city of Palm Valley, and so they couldn't drink water, had to boil what they did use, wash dishes, cook with, so forth. Can happen. There's a lot of trust involved in our water, and when we get it, when we go to the tap, turn it on, we expect it to be safe to drink. If we don't expect it to do us harm, we expect that water to be what it's supposed to be, and that's good, cool, cold, and refreshing, not something that's going to do us harm. First of all, we want to tell you exactly why the question that we're getting ready to pose on tape to Michael Chertoff, the purpose of the question was to basically advise him of the special, unique vulnerabilities and characteristics that exist here along the U.S. border, predominantly here in South Texas and the United States and northern Mexico. Secondly, we wanted to somewhat point out to the Secretary of Homeland Security that the federal government's single mindset of focusing on enforcement as the solution, keeping illegals from Mexico and OTMs other than Mexicans from Central and South America out of our country is one thing, but there are other aspects of it. Is U.S. visit necessary? Is the building of a fence going to be necessary that the Congress has now moved to build, and they're voting to build it? Sent that over to the Senate. We don't know what the Senate's going to do. So with that in mind, we now take you to our question that we asked Secretary Chertoff at a news conference and his response, along with that of Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison. Secretary Chertoff, Ron Whitlock, Valley Newsline. If you would think about it, you must realize, obviously, from where you stand, that the air you breathe was in Mexico a few brief minutes ago. And the water that you see behind you is the water supply for the 1 million people who occupy this region called the Rio Grande Valley. Not only that, this region provides sole source products to Detroit and keeps Detroit open under just-in-time delivery or closed if those products are not able to be manufactured. The federal government required the water utilities in the area to do a vulnerability assessment several years ago. They are now striving to find funds to try and provide some kind of monitoring for the water, because as you can easily see, to attack America, you don't even have to come to America. You don't have to get beyond these men in uniform, swim the river, climb a wall, or anything else, just put something in that water behind you and you will attack America. Could you see fit to add water utility vulnerability assessment monitoring equipment to your security border initiative? And or maybe Senator Hutchison could respond to that also.
Well, I think what I'm going to say is this. We have, of course, through the state Homeland Security grant funding process, a whole range of funding for states to make sure they elevate their protection of critical infrastructure. That includes water utilities, includes power plants, and other kinds of critical infrastructure that's important to deal with the issue of a threat to the public safety and welfare. I think this particular initiative, though, is really focused on dealing with the issue of people getting across the border. So I'm confident that, the governor, who's obviously getting this money, is mindful of the challenges here as throughout the rest of the state, and that he's going to pay very careful attention to what can be done to make sure that all the facilities here are as secure as they can possibly be.
Senator Hutchison,
you want to?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Ron. Your point is very well taken, and it is part of the general security, homeland security that we are looking at. As the Secretary said, this is going to be more in the area of biosecurity and the security of our water supply, farm products. I think all of the different issues of the types of terrorism that we might have are going to be addressed in a comprehensive way in different departments.
Now, Don, you saw the Secretary of Homeland Security, Michael Chertoff, respond to my question. You saw the response of Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison. Do you think either one really understands that the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas could be attacked with a dirty bomb, airborne attack, 10 miles inland into Mexico, prevailing wind southeast, coming off of the country of Mexico into the United States, million people here in South Texas. 90% of the time, the wind blows from the southeast into the Rio Grande Valley. Do you think either one really had even thought about it?
Well, as a former first responder for the City of Pharr Public Works Director, one of the things that we did after 9/11, and of course our incident command increased. It used to be that we looked at emergency plans for natural disasters. Now we had to start looking at man-made disasters. And one of the things that we did is that we assessed our city, as many cities across the Rio Grande Valley did. And of course, it's been 3 to 4 years since we did that. And I think on the answers that had came from our U.S. Senator and Secretary Chertoff was to put it to the states. Yes, in most cases it should be, and it goes back to the cities. But it's an unfunded mandate because the potential's still there. We looked at our international bridge, we looked at our water plant, wastewater plant, fuel stations within there that hold fuel, and to this day, the funds are still not received in the Rio Grande Valley that are needed.
So you take a look at your water supply, and you probably, by focusing on, as a city manager, public works director, you're focusing on delivery of water so much that 99% of the time you're thinking of just delivering the water. You kind of take for granted that it's going to be safe because it is being monitored. It's being monitored by your staff. You assume your staff is doing what they're supposed to do. They're taking the test as required by TCEQ, by the federal government, to make sure that water supply is acceptable. But sometimes things go awry, as we saw in the Valley Morning Star. Valley Morning Star headline, September 27, 2006, story by Alex Essex, says, water woes. Santa Rosa School District opts to provide bottled water until problem fixed. You would, as a person who has done this for a living, explain to our audience what exactly happened in Santa Rosa.
Just to make the record straight, remember at most cities in the Rio Grande Valley, Public Works oversees both public utilities and public works, streets and drainage. At the City of Pharr, I did not oversee that, but as a city manager in Elsa, of course, I got to see the whole broad spectrum of governmental services, and at least what I saw from the public notification, they had an increase or beyond a limit of halocytic acids, and I think that was what changed, and at least what you explained to me, what the city manager had explained to you, is that the regulations changed, and that's why the levels were higher than increased. The concern, of course, I have is that that some people drink the contaminated halocetic acids in excess of the MCL, the maximum contaminant level over many years have increased the actual risk of cancer, and that really concerns me. Now, as far as what happened in Santa Rosa compared to some other cities, as you mentioned in the past, yes, I mean, the reagents that are used are there, the chlorine to clean contaminants that come, like in the video that we saw, the Rio Grande River. We're not looking at those other items that may be coming in from a dirty bomb, you know, that we looked at during our incident command with the city of Pharr. It's an unknown to us, because remember, what they're looking for are for the contaminants that they're trying to cure with chlorine and other reagents, not viruses or other type of contaminants of water like we saw, like we're going to see in the video that happened in Armenia in 1915.
Santa Rosa City Manager Joe Lopez assured this reporter that the water is secure, is safe to drink in Santa Rosa. Even though that is the case, the Santa Rosa School District is providing bottled water to its students until they're assured that the water supply is safe to drink. For centuries, Don, before chemicals, before gas, before bombs were created by mankind, by society, terrorists kill people to disrupt societies and their economies by poisoning their water supply. Been done for centuries, and this is not a unique trend or unique something that's been done. Historical documentation proves that. Before the Jewish Holocaust, the first significant genocide, the original genocide, according to our next guest on the program, involved the Armenian people. Dr. David Topazian, who you're not going to see on your screen, told a Harlingen Country Club audience how his Armenian family were terrorized into abandoning their country and immigrating to the United States by the Turks. That's who were terrorizing them, by dumping of live bacillus into the water supply of the country of Armenia, killing over 2.5 million people. Now, here's Dr. David Topazian at the Harlingen Country Club.
None of the Armenians had a happy life at that time. There was an attempt by the Turks to just eliminate them as a race in what the Armenians call the original genocide. 2.5 million Armenians were killed by one means or another in the time 1915 to 1917. It was a terrible time. My father, his father and his sister had died from typhoid because the Turks put typhus bacilli in the town well. Everybody got typhoid fever, and he and his mother survived. But here in my mind's eye, I could see this young lad, little more than a child, running. Come on, Maidik. They got to Yerevan. She was just absolutely worn out. And she died. And he was 11 years old. And there was nobody who cared. He dug the grave himself. And he left that place with nothing. Nothing.
Don, a very poignant story this gentleman tells about his father carrying his mother out of that country, which had been terrorized by the poisoning of that water supply, and then his mother passing away, and him coming to this country, that being his father. He's learning this somewhat late in life. You can tell how touched he was, but obviously when terrorists are trying to do something as inexpensive as they can, almost little or no risk to themselves and or to the terrorist who actually does the deed, easy way to completely shut down an economy, kill a lot of people, eliminate a lot of trust, because we think when we buy a bottle of water, it's got water in it. When we go to the gas pump, it's going to pump gas or diesel, not buttermilk or something else. All that trust is also would be eliminated when and if something like that were to occur. If it were to occur, God forbid it never would occur. So you do your vulnerability assessment. Then obviously you come up with a plan.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you've had to do as a city administrator, involved with the city administration here in the Rio Grande Valley. Then in the last stage, you hope that you're going to have some kind of plan of attack or some action item. You're going to take some action. You're going to be proactive. 3 valley communities have done just that. 3 valley communities, McAllen, Laredo, and Brownsville, are now seeking federal funding, and you're hearing it first on Valley Newsline, to provide equipment in their city, in their water system, to let them know and be alerted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if their water supply would be attacked either from the source, where the water goes into the pump, or any place along the line in those municipalities. Again, Brownsville, McAllen, and Laredo. There have been 2 teams that have come in on 2 occasions into those communities, done a site survey, come up with a recommendation, and now those communities are going to Congress, in particular going to Congressman Henry Cuellar to try to get the Laredo and the McAllen site funded, and Brownsville going to Congressman Solomon Ortiz to try to get theirs funded in the city of Brownsville. And those municipalities wish to tie in those 3 systems, so they've got some kind of an idea up and down the Rio Grande, from Laredo down to the Rio Grande Valley, McAllen first, and ending up in Brownsville, that if it were to be attacked upstream, they would know about it immediately if that were to occur upstream. You excited about that, Don?
Well, yes, sir. I'm excited because, one of the things that's very important is that a lot of our cities that are alongside each other have interconnect water systems, water lines. In case there's any problem with water, they can get water from another community. And what concerns me is that not only would one community be affected if, God forbid, something would happen, other communities that interconnect with them. And I'm hoping that maybe some other cities can piggyback on some of those funding, because that's what we need. We need to take a proactive approach, because I think that our potential of a terrorist act in the valley, we're the gateway to the Rio Grande Valley, not from the north, but from the south as well. Our trade is improving. We're doing well. We're still some of the 2 poorest counties in the entire nation, but yet we need these federal funds to protect our residents and to protect the rest of the United States that come through here, because many items cross through this area, and that's why I'm excited to know that federal funding is going to be coming here, or at least that the opportunity is going to be there for us.
Is it really that important?
Water is life. That's one thing I've always learned from our public utilities director in Pharr, Texas, is that water is life. No matter where you look at it, water is essential for our farming, our hospitals, our schools, as we mentioned here, the Santa Rosa going to bottled water versus drinking the water that comes from our faucets. I could not see, with my kids in McAllen, having to drink bottled water versus going to the fountain and drinking water. That's a real concern for me.
So you think this is a responsibility that really truly exists by the Brownsville Public Utilities Board, the McAllen Public Utilities Board, all of those trustees elected by the citizens of McAllen and of Brownsville, but also in Laredo, which is still part of the administration and responsibilities of the city of Laredo. You see it as something that they are, as a fiduciary, responsible for the health, well-being, and so forth, and the economies of those communities. It's something that they must do.
Of course, and with the help of their state and federal governments. I mean, remember, all our taxes in the aggregate all returned to us by appropriations. In New Orleans, for example, there was always a difference of whether was it FEMA's part, was it the state's part, was it the city's? Well, it's a combination of all 3. I mean, government. I know one of the things that it's always hard to explain to people is that government runs our lives, and if we don't participate and actively work and trying to better our own communities across the country, there will be failures, and we want to prevent those failures in the Rio Grande Valley.
Environmental Protection Agency required all cities larger than 100,000 to perform a vulnerability assessment of their municipal water facilities back in 2003. That was required because a presidential directive by President George Bush, called Directive 9, required EPA to develop, test, and apply a new technology to monitor the nation's water supply and provide an early detection and surveillance system to protect public health and safety. Now, the EPA got about $8 million in 2005's fiscal year, and $45 million going to be approved for this Water Sentinel program for fiscal year 2007. Those dollars available October 2006. That could be applied for right now.
When we just went through our anniversary, the 5-year anniversary, And I don't remember anybody ever asking that question, is our water safe or not? You know, we did our assessment. We came through different areas that we felt that we were going to be vulnerable. We put some fences up, but the proactive approach that we need to be doing here versus the proactive approach toward enforcement along the border, National Guard being here, we need to start looking at our municipalities, and not just the 3 largest ones, but all along the border, because they're all going to be have the potential of being as vulnerable.
Well, to anyone who has lived along this area and along this border as long as this reporter has, prevailing wind coming off of Mexico 90% of the time, southeast winds coming off of Mexico. We recently had a rail mishap with a tanker ruptured by a truck just to the south and west of Harlingen. Most of those injured were taken to the city of Harlingen. Had that been some kind of bad poisonous gas, those fumes would have come into the United States. It appeared obvious at that point that if you went to attack America, you can set off a dirty bomb 10 miles from the United States border, and prevailing wind's going to bring whatever that substance is into the United States with 1 million people in the Rio Grande Valley, and that was the rationale behind the question to Secretary Chertoff.
Well, you know, one of the things that, you know, as a first responder, again, one of the things that happens with an international bridge is that once there's a hurricane, some type of natural disaster, the bridges stay open. They don't close. We don't shut anything off. They stay open. We welcome people to come into our shelters at times, you know, because of the protection that they need. But that 25-mile prevailing wind that comes from the south, you remember a few years ago there was fires down in deep Mexico. The smoke ended up here. You know, we had flooding in
fires.
Exactly.
Right.
We had a flood in South Pharr just this last week. And what happened with that? We had water that was from McAllen and Mission that was flooding Pharr. So, I mean, we all are in this invisible border that now we're trying to protect and keep people out.
It's one community.
One community, and now we're not protecting the things we need to protect.
Don, what would you do if you were responsible for the water supply of any municipality here in the Rio Grande Valley? All the water needs for these people, all these businesses that require and need this water in order for life, commerce, etc. to continue.
Well, you know, a lot of times, you know,
should they be getting ready to buy this kind of equipment?
Well, I think it's important because, you know, one of the things that spinach, for example, you know, we had to wait till people got sick before we started looking at what the source of the problem was versus being proactive. And with this type of monitoring system, I think it's important. You know, and me to take a look at some of the first things that I've seen today is it's important for us because why should we wait till somebody gets sick?
When you go to war, you put on a helmet.
Exactly. And this
when
is
you drive a car, you put on a seatbelt.
Exactly.
You proactively get ready for anything that may endanger you, your family, and your neighbors. Thank you so much, Don, for coming
Thank you very much.
Very important topic for the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas. Thank you for joining us. Till next time, adios.